Last week, I intrigued a lot of you by saying that this week we'll talk about something that's either loved or hated. Well, we're talking about the banjo today. So was I right? And also consider this. Pete Seeger once said that every American should be issued a banjo upon birth. Well, I wonder what the country would look like if we had done that. I guess we'll never know though. So if you're ready to learn about the banjo, here we go. This video is going to be a lot of fun to watch for those who already know the banjo or already play it, who love the banjo, or even composers and arrangers who would like to learn about it. But this video is actually geared for, I'm really making it for people that say they hate the banjo or say they don't like it. Because I want to challenge everything you thought you knew about the banjo. And maybe today we'll give you a whole new perspective of what the banjo is. Because I'm here to tell you that the banjo is actually a lot more than just one instrument. The banjo has a huge variety of physical differences, including number of strings and sizes, and its variety in genres is nearly endless. The banjo has already made its way into pop, electronic, and even classical music with a number of concertos written for it. So if you're ready to discover all the varieties of banjos there are, let's get started. All right, let's get started. There's so much to tell you about banjos, and I really hope to be able to explain a lot about banjos by the end of this video. So we're going to go through these pretty quickly because there's a lot of banjos to get through. But I hope that you'll have a better idea about banjos by the end of this. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Absolutely. So let's get started with what is a banjo? How can we define it? Well, the simplest term, we could just say it's a drum with strings on it, because you have a tight membrane here over top of a piece of metal or wood or both with a neck and strings on it. Using that simple definition, we actually find that the banjo in that term exists all over the world. In Japan, in Turkey, Iran, Africa, all have variations of an instrument with a tight head and strings on it. But today we're going to be looking at specifically instruments that look like this. We have a lot of them to go through. This one is probably the quintessential instrument that comes to mind when someone says the banjo. This is a 5-string banjo, specifically a 5-string resonator banjo, because it has this back on it, as compared to, for example, this 5-string banjo here, which has no back on it. And this is obviously titled open back banjo. So this one's not missing a back, it just was made like that. So when you compare these two, there's definitely a huge difference in tone. The resonator was originally added simply just to project the volume, which it does do. But the tone is a little different. So if you're considering as an arranger what banjo to use, keep in mind that all these little differences on a banjo actually make a huge impact on how they sound. So now let's talk about the tuning of this banjo and how it relates to other banjos. So there's 5 strings, as I said. This 5th string was originally a drone string. It wasn't noted. Now in modern playing it is. It's just as equal as the other 4 strings. So we have the tuning of the lowest string D, then G, then B, then D, then the highest string here, G. So this is in open G. Now, this banjo here, a 5-string banjo, is specifically played usually in either one of 2 styles, either upstroke using picks or bare fingers, but it's typically with picks either 2 or 3 fingers, and you get, like you heard at the beginning of the video. Or you can take those picks off and turn your hands to the down, and you go downstroke in what's called claw hammer. So you have those 2 options. Now, if you take away the 5th string, pretend that's not there, you now have a 4-string banjo with the exact same scale, and that has a new name titled the plectrum banjo, because you use a pick or a plectrum to play it. So you can then use it like as a more chordal instrument, like that. So that's also in the exact same tuning, but there was a time around the turn of the century used for ragtime music typically, or some classical music, that you tune this low string down to C. So then you have C, G, B, D. So that just gives you actually quite a huge range. So you have all the way from this low C, if you go to the highest fret here, also a C. So you have a very big range. You know, if you're writing for banjo or arranging for banjo, you know, you have to remember that this instrument has quite a large range to it. Now, speaking of range, before we go to more instruments using the flat pick, I want to take just a quick look at this banjo here. So the banjo can actually go much lower than what you just heard. This is a baritone banjo, as I would call it. I have it tuned in open E. So it's, here's your normal tuning. We drop it. So the banjo has actually been tuned all the way down to an octave lower than the standard G banjo here. So if you can imagine putting really heavy, thick strings on there and tuning it all the way down, you've got a massive sound there. It's a beautiful, really low, thumpy sound. So the idea that the banjo is like this, you know, piercing, tinny instrument, well, it can be, but it also can be this really beautiful, like mellow, low sound, as you can hear on such a tuning like this. All right, so now, as I said, we will go look at some instruments that have flat pick and less than 5 strings, as this one has 5. Let's see, we gotta do some maneuvering here. Oh, I know, I'll put that one there. So we had the plectrum banjo, as I said, which was the 5-string banjo minus the 5th string. Well, now the other 4-string banjo that exists is the tenor banjo. And for violin or viola players, you're in luck because this is tuned just like a viola. C, G, D, A. We have, again, a resonator model, which is super loud. It's really obnoxiously loud. Or here is open back model, which is a little quieter, but still pretty loud because you've got a big old pick and you can really get some huge volume on this thing. Okay, so we had the tenor banjo tuned like a viola. Well, if you take that up a 5th, you get a violin or a mandolin. And mandolin banjos are actually quite common. There's a lot of those out there. I don't have one of them here with me, but I do have a mandolin banjo taken down a whole octave, which is right here. So this is tuned just like a violin or mandolin. E, A, D, G. But it's 1 octave lower. Once again, it's just an incredible plectrum instrument. It's a lot of fun. I really love this thing. So, you know, again, possibilities of the banjo are endless. But now we're going to go to another instrument played with a flat pick, which is probably the most common hybrid banjo there is, and that is a banjo guitar, tuned just like a guitar. Same exact tuning, same chords, everything, but just sounds like a banjo now. So this is probably the most common banjo variation, other than 5-string banjo, that you'd find is the banjo guitar. They're used a lot right now. Of course, there's other banjo instruments like this instrument here, banjo uke. This specific one is not playable, it's kind of just a decoration, but there are certainly professional models. There's also, I've seen banjo lap dulcimers, even a banjo violin of all things, and I've even seen people take a regular banjo and put a slide on their pinky and get some nice sounds like that on there. So you got all sorts of options for banjos. I want to look at one last thing you can do with banjos. So we talked about banjos being loud, and they are, but in modern day contexts, they are you need some amplification with a PA system and a full band. So now we have a pickup here on the bridge, which goes to this cable. And not only does it allow you to be amplified, you can also run it through all those wonderful stomp boxes and effect pedals for guitar players. Now you can put your banjo through that, such as my favorite, which you'll hear right now. Modulation. I love it so much. It's just a lot of fun. So we're basically out of time now. I just wanted to give you a crash course on all of these different options when it comes to what is a banjo. So many different instruments, so many different string amounts, tones, timbres, characteristics, everything. And you know what? This isn't all of the options. There's certainly some that I didn't mention or that I don't have here with me. And furthermore, there's new ideas being realized daily probably. So who knows, we might find tomorrow that there's a new hybrid banjo being built, and it might be the missing piece that we always wanted in our banjo arsenal. So with that being said, I want to leave you with a couple suggestions on where to go from here, specifically with artists. So there's three people I think that are really taking the banjo in a new direction. They're really modernizing it and bringing it to new audiences that otherwise maybe would not have listened to the banjo. Those are Danny Barnes, Tall Tall Trees, and Damien O'Kane. Danny and Tall Tall Trees do somewhat similar things, although it does sound quite differently, but they start the same with an electric banjo, an acoustic banjo with an electric pickup on it. They run it through a pedal board and get some amazing results. Danny has made a couple albums of ambient electronic music. It is just superb. And then when you find out that most of these sounds were made by a banjo, your mind is really blown then. As for Tall Tall Trees, he takes a bass pedal, a looper, and starts layering these tracks. He even takes a drum mallet and beats on the top of the banjo head to get a drum track going. And then he's got a full show. And it's really an incredible performance. I've had the privilege to see him live, and it's wonderful. Damien O'Kane is a tenor banjo player. He plays kind of like Irish or Celtic style tenor banjo. But most recently, he did two fascinating projects. One was a banjo duet with bluegrass banjoist Ron Block. And when you hear a 5-string bluegrass banjo and a 4-string Irish tenor banjo together, some people might think that's the definition of horrible sound, but it's actually one of the best sounds I've ever heard in my life, hearing those two banjos together. You have to hear it. And then most recently, he took a banjo approach to a very famous pop song. And I want you to discover that for yourself. I won't say what it is, but I will leave a link for it, because this is just one of the most outrageous things I've seen this year. I love it so much. I hope I could listen to the whole album with music like that, but there was only one track. All right, so that was a lot of information. Thanks for sticking with me. I can't wait to see you again next week. We'll probably do some more instrument features like this in the future. If you have any questions or comments or curiosity for future topics, please let me know, and we'll see you later. Thanks again. Hey, by the way, if you were interested in any of these banjos we talked about today, in any of the related styles like bluegrass, old-time, jazz, and more, let me know if you're interested in learning, because I am taking new banjo students. We're going to do it all online, pandemic or no pandemic. No matter where you're at in the world, we can figure out how to get you some good banjo lessons. If you've never even held a banjo, that's no problem. We'll get you on the right track to being a happy banjo player. So let me know, hit me up, and we'll get these started.